I want to talk to you today about how to bear much fruit, how to bear much fruit. And it occurs to me that that topic might not be all that interesting, maybe not to you and maybe not to some of the people in your group. It might sound a little bit like how to become more religious. And so I would like to invite you to spend a little bit of time up front talking about what is fruit. And I want to suggest to you that fruit is the good stuff. In other words, where I taught this yesterday, I was surrounded by an orchard of pecan trees. And if you went out of those pecan trees, what's the good stuff in that pecan tree? Well, it's not the bark or the root or the leaves or the branches or so on. It's the fruit. It's the pecan itself. And the good stuff of an apple tree is an apple, and the good stuff of an orange tree is an orange, and so on. And the good stuff of the Christian life is the fruit. Paul described it this way: the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. And I don't think he meant that to be an exhaustive list. I've thought of at least two other things: gratitude and humility, I think could be added to that list as fruit of the Spirit. But it is in essence the good life. When Jesus talked about, my goal is that you bear much fruit, what he was saying is, my goal is that you have life and have it to the full. And another thing we observe about fruit is that fruit is the mechanism by which plants reproduce. It's the reproducing part of the plant. In other words, if you want to grow another pecan tree, you put a pecan in the ground. And if you want to grow another apple tree, you put an apple in the ground, or at least the seed of the apple in the ground. And if you want to grow another orange tree, you put the orange in the ground. And if you want to grow another Christian, you need Christians who are bearing much fruit. So with that in mind, let's think about how we can go about bearing much fruit. Now, what I did as I taught this yesterday was just went through the passage with that in mind. What can we learn from this passage about bearing much fruit? But because I have about half as much time with you, I'm going to skip that and I'm going to get right down to my 4 points. And I'm going to give you 4 points based on Bruce Wilkinson's book, The Secret of the Vine. And he talks about 4 baskets. And if do you want to be an incredible teacher? If you want to be an incredible teacher, here's what I recommend you do. I recommend you find 4 baskets. Go buy you 4 little baskets. And in basket number 1, you want to put nothing. Nothing goes in basket number 1. And then in basket number 2, you put 1 apple, perhaps 1 bit of fruit, whatever fruit you're going to eat ananyway. But let's just say it's an apple. You put 1 or 2 apples in that basket. And then in basket number 3, you put 3 or 4 or 5 maybe apples. And then in basket number 4, you fill that to overflowing. And as we read this passage, we want to look at it. What did Jesus say about the basket who has no fruit, and then fruit, some fruit we might say, and more fruit and much fruit? And we're talking about how we can get, maybe we're down here at the bottom, no fruit, and we want to talk about how we can get from no fruit to some fruit to more fruit to most fruit to much fruit. So basket number 1, no fruit. Let's look at John 15, 1 and 2, where Jesus talked about this. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off. I draw your attention to that word right there. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. And John Corson talk about growing up and listening to sermons on this passage. And the preacher would always kind of wag his finger and say, now you people, you need to bear fruit. And if you don't bear fruit, God is going to cut you off. And he came to understand, and here's a quote from his commentary. He says, I believe that such teaching is a complete misunderstanding of this passage because linguistically, contextually, and logically, it doesn't fit. And let me start with logically and quote another writer, and that's Bruce Wilkinson. He wrote a book called The Secrets of the Vine. And he talked about, in order to understand this better, he went out and talked to an actual gardener, a person who took care of grapevines. And he found a vine, a branch, that was down in the dirt. And he asked the gardener, what do you do with this branch that's down here in the dirt? Do you cut it off? And the gardener laughed at him and he said, no, I don't cut it off. That's a perfectly good branch. It's just down there in the dirt. He said, I lift it up and I tie it to the trellis, and maybe I get some water and clean it off a little bit. If not, it rains quite a bit around here. It's going to rain, and the rain itself is going to clean it up. And that's going to become a fruit-bearing branch. I just need to get it up out of the dirt. I just need to lift it up. And what John